this is Oksana Ver Fine Art and welcome to Technical Thursdays. In today's video, I will be continuing the topic of blending with colored pencils, and I will be exploring the method of using solvents. Now, I'm not a solvent expert, so my little experiments that I have made just for you, I will show you a few tips and tricks that hopefully you can apply in your own drawing practice. So stay with me and enjoy the video. So for my demonstration, I'm going to use three major brands of solvents, since that's all I've got. So in my number one here, I just use these prescription with medicine cups that they're pretty useful. So my first one is the Mona Lisa Odorless Paint Thinner. In my second cup, I have Gamsol by Gamblin Odorless Mineral Spirits. And in my third cup, I have Zest-It solvent. And I got this from Jackson's Art Supply from UK. It says citrus free, so many people I've heard from don't really tolerate the smell of the Zest-It because of the citrus smell. Some love it, some don't, but I personally did not mind it. Did not really to me personally smelled strongly of the citrus. Okay, so I'll use that for demonstration as well. For demonstration, there will be three papers that I will be using and showing on to Strathmore 300 Bristol Smooth. Then I'll use a Stonehenge White, and the last one, Pastel Matte White. So all on white paper, using just polychromos pencils by Faber-Castell, because that's what I decided that I'll go with. No particular reason on the choice of pencils. Now, the shades that I picked particularly was for this photo reference that I took of the rose in the garden, and after it rained, it had these beautiful water drops. So what I want to do for my future tutorial is to show how to actually draw a dewdrop, maybe one or two dewdrops, or maybe all of these. So this is still in the making, but today I want to explore mixing, blending colored pencil with solvents, and just giving you a few tips. And again, I'm not any expert on solvents, and personally I have not used it too many times, maybe just a couple times. It's an option to have to speed up a process of blending, and again, it could be either love or hate relationship. But I'm here for you to show what I come up with, and hopefully you get something out of it as well. So again, the reason I chose the papers, no particular reason, but what I wanted to have a smooth paper, then with a little bit of tooth like Stonehenge White, and then a more unique surface of Pastel Matte, which if you haven't used it, you will find it that it likes a lot of layers, and it's just, again, it's either easy to manage or not easy to manage at all. So love and hate relationship there as well. Okay, so with Strathmore 300 Bristol Smooth, I will do three squares, and I will use, since I will be using three different solvents, and I'll be using these sets of pencils that I chose, because again, I'm just referring to my photo reference, and the colors I chose are the colors that I possibly will be using for my small tutorial or demonstration on the water droplets. So these are the pencils by Faber-Castell Polychromas. So I'm going to use warm gray 1 as my first layer. It's light magenta, okay, second layer, then pink Madder Lake, third layer, light purple pink, fourth layer, and the fifth layer would be violet. And then actually the sixth, I think I will put warm gray 1 again. So that's going to be my process. So I will show you in real time one square, and then the rest will be sped up for you, just so you're not stuck with me making, what is it going to be, 3 times 3, 9 squares for each paper and for each solvent that I'm going to use. And we'll just play with it. Again, I haven't done that. I have not prepared this before. This is going to be exploring and making decisions on the go. All right, so hopefully you enjoy it as well. All right, so let's make the first square. If you have seen my previous video on blending the colored pencils without any solvent, it was just pure colored pencils, I talked about layers. I talked about how blending, and that was burnishing method, by the way, how blending likes to have a lot of colors applied on the paper. I'm using about 2 to 3 pressure. It's really going to be hard to see as this is warm gray 1. It's very, very light color. Next is light magenta. Okay, so again, same pressure, even coverage. My strokes are linear in different directions, diagonal and then vertical. I just want an even coverage. I want to have enough pigment so when we use a solvent, it has pigment to mingle. All our pigments will be mingling together. Blend and mingle. All right. All right, next color, pink Madder Lake. And again, there's no recipe for an order of the colored pencils that you should be using. This is again just what I chose based on guessing, pretty much. I just looked at the colors that I saw, and if you want more help with choosing colors, I have made videos in the past where I showed how to pick the colors using Photoshop, and also how I use color swatches. You may find those helpful. All right, next layer, light purple pink. I just go from side to side, varying the direction of my linear strokes. This is just testing. I'm not now if I was having a specific subject like a rose or petal or leaf or something else, my strokes might have been different depending on the shape of the subject. Next layer, violet, light pressure of violet. So the purpose is to have enough pigment to mingle together with the rest of pigments on the paper once they're going to be blended with the help of our friend, or maybe not friend, we'll see, we'll find out, solvent. Solvent will make us either have fun with it or maybe not too much fun. We'll see. Warm gray 1 is going to be last layer. Very light pressure, 1 to 2. and this is very smooth surface. I when I decide on the project, depending what paper I use, I may or I may not use solvent. A lot of the times on smooth paper, I will probably likely not use it and use probably burnishing method. So, but I wanted to show you the differences. So that's the whole point of experimenting. All right, so now I'm going to just speed up the rest of my here, the swatches. So before I use the solvents, I want to take a quick look at all the paper swatches here. So we have 3 of the swatches here on Strathmore 300 Bristol Smooth and on Stonehenge White and Pastel Matte White. As you can tell, as I was applying them, they felt very quite differently. These papers are very different in their texture. So the paper that had more tooth shows more white, okay? And I'm very interested in seeing how the solvent behaves with all these 3 types of paper. So shall we just dig in and get our solvents out and see what happens once we blend these pencils. I'm going to start with our first paper, Strathmore 300 Bristol Smooth, very smooth paper, and I'm going to just use a brush. There is no specific brands of brushes that I'm going to recommend you. I just choose anything that I have on hand that's not quite stiff and not quite soft, somewhere in between. I've even used makeup brush before. You just have to experiment and see what you like better. And again, I don't have recommendation for the brushes. It's just anything that works for you, okay? Some people even use Q-tips instead of brushes, so it's up to you. Now, let me just talk about how much solvent we're going to use. it's very, very easy to get too much solvent on your brush or Q-tip, whichever. And this is why you need a paper towel or napkin, something where you can dab off the excess. There are some hacks that other artists have shared in the past, saying that they have made DIY, like put the solvent into the sponge, like soak a little the sponge, and keep it in a container with a closed lid, and that actually helps you not pick up as much pigment on your brush. So you could do that. You could cut out the sponge, put some solvent in it, close it. It has to be airtight, maybe like metal or glass, and then you can just dip it into the soaked with solvent sponge instead of just directly going into liquid solvent. Okay, but since I'm just experimenting with solvents and this is what I've got, let's pick up our Mona Lisa thinner. All right, so again, a little bit. Even when you think you picked up a little bit, it will probably be too much. Dab it off, and let's mix our layers in first. Now, another thing that I have noticed, even when I have done in the past, is having like a ring around, or like almost like a halo effect from the solvent. That means it's either too much of solvent, or it could be the paper, or because of white color. So when I feel like it's not mixing too well, I will go ahead and pick up a little bit more solvent, dab it off, always dab it off. And maybe don't start in the very edge, because it does spread. It spreads, and that's how it, actually the ring may around it may appear due to that specific reason. And then basically what happens, the pigment turns into almost like a paint that you can just mix and mingle all this pigment together. All these layers that we applied, they're mingling together. And you can just use in any direction you want of the brush. Make it however you want. Try to mix it as even as possible. For me, it doesn't always work. It doesn't always happen that way when everything is even. But that's why this is never going to be on its own layer. It's good to use colored pencils on top of it. And another tip is, when you're ready to jump in with your colored pencils on top, make sure you let it dry. Okay, make sure the solvent is dry. Okay, so I don't know, I am not a big fan how it mixed together. It's very smooth paper, and if I was working Strathmore, it's very unlikely that I would be using solvent, to be honest. All right, anyway, I could here maybe adjust a little bit or not adjust. Even to clean the brush, you can dab it into the solvent and wipe off on the napkin, okay, or paper towel. Let's try our Gamblin Odorless Mineral Spirits. All right, dab it off, and not starting at the very edge. That's why it's important to have enough pigment so it can mix very well. All right, I see some mixing happening. Make sure I don't dip it into the wrong solvent. It's turning like into paint. So the idea behind using solvent in your work could be for a variety of reasons. In my opinion, the main reason is to get rid of these white speckles, those valleys, right? The whites that you see on the paper showing. You want to cover those up. And another reason could be achieving the smoothness. So you don't see any rough texture going on, right? You want more smooth like a even underpainting. Okay, so this, I actually like the Gamblin, not so bad. And the third will be our Zest-It. Okay, dip and then dab. Let's see. Again, you can always pick up more. It's always go less is more, right? Our mantra for so many variety of mediums and techniques. You can always go back and get more solvent. So this is blended quite nicely. So I'm just, what's happening right now, I'm moving this pigment around because the solvent is helping to loosen it up, and it's like a paint, right? So I really like it. Not bad. Not bad. All right, great. So now when we take a look at all our samples here, experiments, right? It's almost hard to tell that it was 3 different solvents. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But what I found that the mix, I don't know, to me it doesn't seem as smooth as I was hoping. So it could be due to various reasons. It could be because of the smooth paper. It could be because maybe a wrong type of brush. It could be because how I was mixing. So you know, it could be for a variety of reasons. That's why I'm calling this experimenting. Again, it's for some it may not be the favorite thing to do, working with solvents. But again, if we don't try, we won't know. Let's move on to the next paper, our Stonehenge White, and see how that behaves. Okay, so we'll start with Mona Lisa. I have a feeling this is gonna work much better because it's much toothier paper, and it might have a better job at mixing the pigments. I'm trying not to go too much with solvent because I don't want the rain effect, but it could happen despite how hard you try. Let's pick up a little bit more. So again, you would use colored pencils on top. This is not your only layer. Okay, so that's our Mona Lisa. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and try Gamblin. All right, let's see. Actually, I got a little bit more pigment, solvent this time. This is why when I was applying all these layers, if you didn't have enough layers, you sometimes if you see that it's not mixing very good, it could be also not having enough layers. And you saw I was putting quite a lot of layers. I wanted to make sure there was enough pigment to mingle together. Okay, all right, so here's our Gamsol. Not too bad. Okay, clean the brush. And let's go ahead and try Zest-It. Okay, let's try Zest-It and see what happens. Okay, now as you can see, all these solvents are working as far as pushing and moving the pigment around. So they are doing their job. Now I also think some colors work better or worse when mixed with solvents. It could be the combination of the pinks that I'm using, or it could be also another reason could be brand of the pencil. Like if I was only using a different brand or a mix of brands, we may have got different results. Again, this is just speculation, guessing. You would have to have more experiments, right? It really comes down to what works for you, trying it out. Okay. All right, so we finished Stonehenge White, and now what I'm gonna do, like, let's see here, move this up. Actually, let's see. I'm going to put these two aside and concentrate on Pastel Matte White. All right, let's start with Mona Lisa. Pastel Matte, oh boy, yeah, you can, it's a very unique surface. I think Solvent loves Pastel Matte personally, because look, it's turned into paint. It's really cool. I actually quite like it. Now another tip I want to give you is when you're working on your artwork and you do want to use solvent, please do on the swatches on the same paper type. Cut like a small piece and practice first on a sample paper, because if you do make a mistake on your nice artwork, and it would be devastating. You may able to fix it or you may not be able to fix it. You are running a risk, a big huge risk. All right, so not too bad. So I cleaned the brush. Let's go ahead and try Gamblin Odorless Mineral Spirits. Actually pick up a little bit more dab. Okay. I'm just moving it around in different directions, depending on what the coverage I want. You can like move it into the center like this from the sides. Okay, so very nice, actually, very nice. Cleaning my brush again, just clean it and wipe it off. As you can see, the pigment stays on the napkin. All right, our last one. Okay, let's go ahead and use Zest-It. Not too bad. I honestly think that all these solvents work just fine. If you happen to have only one of these and not all three of these, I think you're still going to be okay. Now you can experiment with other pencil brands or a combination of brands, okay? Now if I tried everything I wanted, I would not have had enough probably time for everything, okay? All right, so here's our last swatch. Now let's bring up all of our examples here, experiments, and take a quick look and have a verdict, hopefully. Okay, let's see what we think. So we had a very smooth paper in our first example. In the second example, we had a more toothier paper and a unique surface by Pastel Matte White. So very different results, as you can see. Now, again, and I mentioned before, I probably would not use a solvent with Bristol Smooth. Maybe if it was different pencil brands combination or different colors used, maybe I would have tried it. But I do like using solvent on more toothier papers or even sanded papers, because it really mixes the pigment and covers all those valleys in the paper, right? All the white speckles, and turns into paint and really blends them together well. I did like Pastel Matte. Now, since these were very tiny swatches, I just wonder if it would make a huge difference or not if I went with a different color on top. So even if I took the violet color and tried, for example, to see on top if it makes a difference. So let's see. Yeah, it goes on top pretty good. Even if I wanted like a dewdrop. Let's look at this paper. And you can use solvent more than once in the same drawing. Nobody tells you why you shouldn't. You can again experiment. So if you applied more colored pencils and you wanted to blend those, you absolutely can. And let's do the Pastel Matte. Very different effects. All very different effects. What if I went with a little bit lighter color and tried to blend where I applied the violet? So with the warm gray one, just to kind of blend it in. Now I did not wait too long, so I wonder if I wait a little bit longer, it would have different results. Yeah, on Pastel Matte is not completely dry. Okay, but I just wanted to show you that you can apply colored pencils on top and still continue to work through your project. I hope this was very helpful for you, and see if you can experiment yourselves or not. And this was the final verdict of my presentation. Thank you so much for staying with me and watching my video. I hope that it was helpful for you in terms of something new or something old, or maybe some tricks that you found that you could apply and try in your own drawing practice. So please, if you have any suggestions or comments, post below and I will try my best to answer them. Have a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.